This is the Self-Aware Leader Podcast. Now your host, Jason Rigby.
Let's all be vulnerable. No, we're not going to do vulnerability exercises, but we are going to talk about the power of it and what it looks like if you want to make deeper connections and deeper relationships with those that you serve, those that you lead, the team members that you are going to day in and day out, every single day, spending hours and hours and hours with these people, but yet they really don't know you. So what does that look like? So I want to get into a starting point of this because I think it'll help some of you that are logical, some of you that don't have the emotional side. Emotional side, we're quick and easy to share all our feelings, aren't we? And sometimes that can be a detriment, and I'll talk about that because you can be too vulnerable, and then you create friendships that are like on an equal playing field, and a lot of people don't understand or don't know how to be a friend and then you still be their leader because you've got to hold them accountable, you've got to coach, you've got to, you got to call them out. So it's really important when we look at authenticity, when we look at connection. And I want to start with connection. When we understand that we have to connect, we absolutely have to connect with those that we lead. And I always tell people this, think of these people in your life as if it's like a partner, you're in a relationship with them. You have to connect in that, don't you? If you have a spouse or if you have kids, you have to connect with them. You know the relationship is strained when there's not a connection. So what's the proper way to connect with someone? I think the most important thing, and I think the number one thing that you can do is show them that you're a real person that's joking around, having fun, being sarcastic, and allowing others to do that. Now, don't go down the dark road, where you think that you're a comedian, you can say whatever you want. That depends on the culture of where you're at, and you need to be careful that that doesn't become toxic and that someone in your organization may not like it, and next thing you know, open yourself up for a lawsuit. And we see this happening over and over and over again, and it takes one person. So, you can joke around and be vulnerable and have fun and not be like super dirty or not be sexist or any of those things. You can look and see what's inside of yourself and say, hey, if I'm leaning towards this way or talking this way, who's in the room? Is it going to offend anybody? And these are self-aware questions that you can do. But to connect, the connection comes from the coaching. I'm going to say that again. The connection comes from the coaching. When you begin to coach with somebody and you're asking them questions and they begin to be vulnerable with you and open up, guess what happens? You create a relationship there. And you're creating the right relationship, the proper relationship, because it's a coaching relationship. And they're going to be vulnerable and open up to you. And that's where it's very important, where you share your mistakes, you share some issues that you may have had, maybe back in the day when you were on the sales floor, you did this, this, and this. And when you were in marketing or finance, you did this and you made this mistake and it cost the company this much. That's when you can share those things. And then what you learned, to allow them to be vulnerable. That creates the connection, if that makes sense. That's why coaching all the way around. As a leader, coaching is the number one thing you can do. Could you imagine not having a coach on a football team? Think about that. Could you imagine not having all the different, like an offensive coach, a defensive coach, and then they're talking with the players one-on-one. They know them really, really well, but still that player recognizes them as a coach, don't they? That connection that you make builds a deeper relationship. And the best way to make that connection, in my opinion, is through your coaching sessions. That's why you need to be talking to people, I think, in the beginning weekly, and then you could go to bi-weekly, and at the most 3 weeks. I like to do 3-week coaching sessions, but I don't like to go longer than a month. And I make my coaching sessions my number one priority for the week. Coaching becomes number one in your life because people are the most important thing. They're the most important in your business. You guys know this. So the power of vulnerability in leadership. Well, number one, it increases self-awareness. It allows you to be able to question yourself, well, should I share this? Should I not? And then you're doing those thinking exercises. You're checking your thoughts. You're going through them. And then that self-awareness, as you're creating that connection in that relationship, both of you are able to be self-aware. And then you can stand in front of a team meeting. You're asking questions, allowing everyone to talk. And then you can be like, yeah, I think that'd be a pretty good story to share. I think I'll share that. I think it'll help everyone. It's not me being narcissistic. It's not me being selfish and trying to suck up all the time and energy in the room. I'm just going to share a story just like everyone else. But I'm still going to make sure that I only talk 20% and the rest of the team talks 80%. So I hope that makes sense with increased self-awareness. Next is strengthened relationships. And we talked about this a little bit, but anytime that someone sees you being vulnerable in a positive way, not you being narcissistic and feeling sorry for yourself and complaining. I see this with leaders all the time. The minute that they get a little bit of stress, they have to let everyone know that they're in a bad mood. They have to let everyone know that they're a victim. If you're running around playing the victim because you want your employees to feel sorry for you because maybe you're middle management and the CEO yelled at you, guess what? That's narcissistic. That's not going to strengthen the relationship. All that's going to do is make everybody be able to look at you in a way that is not a leader. It's a tyrant. It's not just a tyrant, but it's somebody that is all about themselves. And so what that person begins to do in that type of relationship is they have to play victimhood too. And then in that victimhood, they have to protect themselves. There's fight or flight. There's ego gets involved. A lot of hurt feelings a lot of times. So the relationship begins to get destroyed. And that in and of itself, that wrong toxic vulnerability, and I want to call it that, the toxic vulnerability, causes relationships to be unstrengthened, not strengthened. Next is enhanced creativity and innovation. This is a sidebar of you being vulnerable and allowing others to be vulnerable because it allows people to be open about the way that they think, about the way that they are. Excuse me. So it creates this innovation that begins to happen. And where does innovation come from? I think it comes from trust. I think when people feel like they can trust each other and you get that synergy that begins to happen on your team and those that you serve, then next thing you know, because they can trust, they become more creative. Like I said, it's a byproduct. And then innovation comes from that creativity. It always does. When you have a team that's being highly creative, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get a ton of innovation. And what's that innovation? What is that? It's an amazing return on your investment, isn't it? And I'm not saying doing this just for your ROI, but isn't it amazing the things that you do and when you do them right as a leader and when you're really trying and you're being selfless and you're coaching and you're doing all these things and your team's operating at 10, it is amazing that you begin to make a ton of money. When I see a business struggling, I always see bad leadership. That's just the way it is. I can walk into a business, begin to talk to some leaders, and I can instantly see, usually within 5 to 10 minutes, I can instantly see where the problem is in the organization. Next is improved decision-making. When you allow people to be vulnerable and express their emotions to you without judgment, really important, allow your employees to be frustrated. Now, they may not see you frustrated, but you need to let them vent to you with no judgment, that you will not hold it. And you need to show that and not share that with other people. So many leaders get caught up in the gossip train. What makes you a leader? By not doing that. I tell people all the time, I don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. If it's about another person and it's negative, I don't want to hear it. I just say that. I'll have other leaders want to come to you and gossip about other leaders too. I don't allow any of that. You need to shut that down like really, really quickly. Well, Jason, I may miss out on something. I may not be able to get the scoop or the information that I need to make decisions. It's not based off of that. What Susan and Bill are doing during their lunch break has no concern of mine as a leader. You're like, well, that could, no. Some things are if it begins to destroy the workplace and everybody's gossiping, yeah. But guess what? Everybody's human, isn't it? Now, if Bill's a leader and Susan's, somebody that just got hired, and maybe there's a big age difference or something like that, then I need to have that conversation. But I don't need to stick my nose into every single little thing, because in my coaching sessions, I've had that stuff come out. You will be surprised when you create a level of vulnerability, what people will share with you. You almost become kind of like, instead of a coach, like a counselor. It's really, really amazing. And in that process, if they know there's no judgment and they can share anything with you, they're going to. You know how many times I've had somebody come to me, and this is beautiful, guys, listen to me. They'll come to me and say, you know what, all this weekend, I was fighting with my partner, fighting with my spouse, and I'm just really, really tired. You know what I say? Thank you for sharing that with me. I want you to take the day off. I want you to go to a park. I want you to go somewhere relaxed. I want you to go to a spa day. I want you to go treat yourself and do something really nice for yourself. I don't need to get involved. It's not my argument. I'm just as a good leader doing what I think. And then, hey, tomorrow come in and we'll hit this hard. I want to see you in the morning. It's so cool when you have vulnerability, because they're going to share with you when, instead of somebody's performance just falling and you firing them, you can have a conversation with them about what's going on. I had somebody who was devastated for 2 weeks because their dog died. And some people, it's like their kids. I needed to let them go and process that and handle that. They can make up the time later. Right now, they had a death in the family. And a lot of people will come to work because they feel like, to other people, maybe a dog dying is not that important or whatever. But that was like I said, like a child. So that person needed the time off. But I've had people come into my office and like be, hey, boss, I just need to talk to you real quick. I'm super pissed off. I'm like, okay, perfect. You know what I'm going to say? And they're like, yeah, this is a learning lesson. What do I need to learn from it? This is like a mirror. This is a weakness that I have that's inside of me. They're going to do that. Improve decision-making. That's what you're doing. You're creating leaders. So with the power of vulnerability, you're having people that are more self-aware. They're having stronger relationships with each other. They're having enhanced creativity. They're innovating at a higher level, and they're having great decision-making. So you just created a leader. And that's what we're here to do, aren't we? Leaders create leaders. Next is, how do you create a culture of vulnerability? Well, I think number one, you have to lead by example. And that means you keeping your mouth shut 90% of the time. Lead by example. And when you do have a vulnerability story, check it out first, see if it's something that you should share or not. Don't talk about the argument that you had with your wife. Don't talk about, a kid, that what's going on with your kid. I see this, leaders have problems in their personal life and they just use the opportunity to run around because that person has to listen to you because you're their boss. You're like holding them as like time hostages. And they're going to be nice to you, but they have their own problems. They don't need to hear yours. So vulnerability doesn't mean you just running around diarrhea of the mouth with problems, your problems. People don't need to hear that. You're a leader. So lead by example. Number two, foster psychological safety. Did a whole podcast on psychological safety, so we're not going to go into that big time. Number three, encourage open communication. This is creating a culture. Allow people, when you have a problem and people are disagreeing in a meeting, say, I love this. Guys, I love this. I'll get a whiteboard and I'll say, let's use Bill and Susan again. I'll say, Bill and Susan, you guys are arguing about this. You're not really arguing. You just have different opinions. We're going to write it on the board. So we're going to write pros and cons from each of your guys' opinions. And then what I'll have them do after we write all the pros and cons, you know what I'll have them do if it's a pretty heated argument? I'll have Bill steelman or straw man the argument, and then he has to be on Susan's side and Susan has to be on Bill's side. And then I want to know strengths and weaknesses once they see it from that other side. It always is amazing. I'm telling you guys, you do that, it's an amazing way to open up communication because you want people to share their frustrations. If they love their job, they are going to be passionate about it. I like when people are passionate about their work. I don't want a bunch of logical widgets and robots running around. And then creating a culture of vulnerability last is celebrate vulnerability. You have to celebrate this. You have to share this. I always thought, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Now that we all have the responsibility in this room, we've heard this. So now we have the responsibility to answer this. So what are we going to do about it, team? If somebody has, I'll dish it right back onto the team. If the responsibility belongs to the team, we're all leaders here. So guys, let me close on this. The benefits of embracing vulnerability in leadership, I'm telling you, through coaching is number one. And if you create a culture of vulnerability, you are going to have 10x. 10x. I'm telling you, 10x of the amazing things that can happen.
Thank you for tuning in to the Self-Aware Leader Podcast with host Jason Rigby. We hope this episode has inspired you to unleash your full potential and embrace your inner leadership. By expanding your consciousness, you can transform your mind, body, and soul and become the remarkable leader you were always meant to be. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your loved ones and help us expand our community. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to having you join us again on the Self-Aware Leader Podcast.